Jason Dixon, yeah, the favorite scene in the 1990 It movie was Stan's head in the fridge. Yeah, I was probably even going to watch that again this year because I love that 1990 adaptation so much, but I just couldn't stomach anything from King this year. I won't let him take away the good classic stories that I loved in the past, and not even really his novels so much as the adaptations of those novels, because I do like the novel It, but there's a lot of stuff in it that just doesn't need to be in there. That's one thing about Stephen King's writer that he even admitted in his autobiography. He called himself a putter inner. He's constantly putting more in, and I hate that about any novel. Like if you're telling a story, and like for example, at some point in the end of It, the novel, the water tower right there, the people that are our heroes are like in the sewers underneath, and the water tower kind of crumbles, and so that's the big thing that you need to know, that the water tower crumbles and that the city outside is seeing it crumble. Okay, that's really all we need to know. But no, Stephen King's going to narrate for us a guy there watching it, and we get his brief little backstory, and we find out what he's doing there, and we find out, all these random stupid things about him that we don't even need to know. We don't even need to know about this character at all. But then he sees the tower crumble. It's like, dude, why don't you just like kill the pace of your novel? I hate that. That's a pitfall that a lot of writers fall into. I did watch this year, and I thought this was actually a pretty interesting topic. I really like anthology movies. Or I love anthology series. Tales from the Dark Side, oh, just classic. Of course, the classic Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Outer Limits. I just love a good anthology series. And I was looking at Halloween movies that I might have missed or whatever, and I saw kept seeing pop up over and over in the list that I would look up, Tales of Halloween, which I think came out in like 2015 or 16. So of course I'm a little, suspicious of anything that's been released that late, but I kept hearing good things about it. I looked into it, and it's got what's her name? Adrienne Barbeau. What's her name? The woman who played the DJ from The Fog. She even has a connecting role throughout this as like the DJ over the night in this town. And it's just a bunch of different stories of all these kind of spooky or horrific or whatever things that are happening in the town on Halloween night. And I'm watching it and I'm thinking, all the reviews I saw about it, it's pretty spot on. It's just kind of good Halloween fun. It's not at all an amazingly made movie. The stories themselves are in no way amazingly well told stories and well developed. It's just sort of an atmospheric, fun Halloween movie, to have on in the background or whatever. And some of the stories were more, I think, had more potential than others. But it made me think, because that's one thing that I specialize in my own writing, and I specialized in the study of writing in this too. When I was getting my MFA degree, so something I really delved in deep to was the art of the tale. And I've talked about this before. All of my short stories are no more than 10 pages long. I think one or two might be like 11-ish or something like that. But I really try to keep short stories short, because I really do believe, I've said this before, I love Edgar Allan Poe's work. And Edgar Allan Poe believed in something called the unity of effect. And he said that if you're really going to get a good effect from a short story, you want people to immerse themselves into your tale, and then just kind of like rise up as though out of a dream with this kind of hangover of this effect that you've had on them with this tale. And the effect that he often went for was terror or something like that. But he said, in order to achieve that unity of effect in a story, it needs to be short enough for readers to read in one sitting. Now, how long something can be for most readers to read in one sitting changes depending on the culture and people's attention spans at the time and so forth. So, Poe's short stories, most people today couldn't actually sit there and read them in one sitting. They just don't have the attention span for it. And it's not to say that there's that these are superior and the novel's crap, the short stories are how to do it. No, because a novel has its own benefits, and it's something you can carry with you. You can carry this world with you for a time, however long it takes you to read the novel, a week or so, a couple weeks, a month even, or whatever, as you're dipping into this story. It's something you can carry with you and mull over and stuff, and that's fine. But unity of effect is like that sucker punch that you get from a good short story. Stephen King, one of the great things he did say about a short story was he was talking about novels, and he said but a short story is something different. He said a short story is like a kiss in the dark from a stranger. And it really is kind of that idea. It's like, where did that come from? You read a really well structured short story and it's like, man, and in some of the episodes, not all of them, but some of the episodes of like Tales from the Dark Side, the old Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt. I mean, some of those episodes were so good and they were crafted around a unity of effects so well, and they tapped into something. They really did enter or recontextualize some sort of inner struggle, our human struggle, and they do it so well that they just really do stick with you. And I love that kind of thing. That's my favorite thing to experience when I read any fiction. That's why I love a good short story, or I love a good short anthology, short film or short episode like that. And so that's what I've tried to achieve or accomplish, but it's very hard to do if you don't know what you're doing. Way too often, even a lot of these anthology series, like, I mean, there are even episodes of the Twilight Zone that were like this, or just more sort of like they kind of get to a, yeah, see, isn't that weird? Or they get to a sort of like, oh, gotcha, gotcha. Or did you get to that little, oh, oh, there's the trick ending or something like that. And Tales from Halloween, this isn't a criticism because I don't know that the movie was trying to be anything other than this, but it was just more sort of like Halloween atmospheric stuff. Had some really cool ideas that if you developed them a little bit more could have been really awesome. But as it was, in the shortness of each little tale, it was just sort of a little up, and then something fun and Halloweeny happened. I mean, horrific even, but whatever. Um, so yeah, it's fun Halloween stuff. But I'm always looking for that because that's the goal. That's the very elusive goal of a good short tale. That it just gut punches you out of nowhere and impose unity of effect where you've got a master storyteller. If it's prose, if it's a fiction that you're reading, then all of the prose, the word choice, the sentence structures, everything, and of course the imagery and the adjectives used, paint a bright picture, and it just all contributes to this one effect. And you can imagine how much harder that is if you're doing it as a short film or a short episode of an anthology series, visually, where you've got a lot more people working on it and you really need a strong director. One of the episodes, like for example, the pilot episode, I think, of Tales from the Dark Side, written and directed by George A. Romero, was Trick or Treat. Mr. What's his name? Harrington or something like that. The old miser, in the town, who would get the kids from the trick or treat at his house, and he tried to scare them. But if they found the IOUs, their parents would be out of debt. And that was a great one that really nailed that kind of thing. So yeah, I love that kind of thing, and I love those for Halloween as well. So maybe I'll talk more about that. But that's what all of my short stories are. If you go on Amazon to my short reads, I've actually got a new story that's new old story. It's called the Witch House. It's going to be published. I wanted to have it published yesterday on Halloween, but I'm still waiting for the formatter to return it to me. So it hasn't come quite yet. But that's coming out in just a day or two. So and I've got a bunch of short reads already published. And right now they're just Kindle reads on Kindle. Once I get maybe 10 or so published, I'll probably put them together as an anthology and even sell it on Amazon as a hardback, but or a hard copy rather. But and you don't have to have a Kindle to read these. You can read them online as well. You just like have a Kindle app or whatever on your computer, which is fine. Though Amazon walks you through that.